So welcome everyone to this to the WSIS+20 webinar 4 to discuss the papers and the submissions which were made, the position papers. And today we would be having 5 such submissions discussed. We would have Lucia Carmaco and Shashank Mohan, who have made submissions of country reports to the Global Network Initiative. We would have the reports of Chile and India being discussed. We have Theresa Swinehart, who is also a MAG member and from ICANN, who would be highlighting on the IGF We Want paper from ICANN. We would have Jutta, Croll, and Marcus Kumar presenting on the dynamic coalition and coordination groups, committees submission. We are supposed to have the APAC youth NetMission group, Bia and Socheata, to share on their submission. I'm not sure if they've joined in yet, and we have Chafic, Chaya from Lebanon IGF, who would be presenting. Since we have a lot of people, the agenda has been posted in the chat and we want more discussion. We would request all of you to stick to the time. With that, I will pass it on to Desiree, and welcome, Bia, to this call. And you have been given your allotted time, so Desiree would take us through the first question. Desiree, over to you.
Thank you, Amrita, and very welcome to all. As Amrita said, this is the 4th webinar in the series of the IGF Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group and Strategy Group. So we're really happy to see a lot of interest here in these webinars, because a lot of people are thinking about the future of the WSIS and the future of the IGF. But the very first part of our webinar would be addressing those particular thoughts and put into the papers and submissions. So I would also ask everyone to make this interactive and stick to their time slot, so that we have 40 minutes left for the discussion. The very first speaker is Lucia. Lucia, you're from Derechos Digitales, and please take us through your report and what do you see, where do you align with the WSIS Elements Paper and what challenges you see through, and the floor is yours.
Thank you all for having us, for having me here. I will briefly outline the main messages of our position paper and how they connect and sometimes diverge from the Elements Paper. About the Elements Paper, we would like to highlight 3 main points. The first one is that human rights should not be framed mainly in terms of restriction. The Elements Paper acknowledge rights as central, but paragraphs 43 to 50 lean towards limits and punitive approaches, and it risks undoing WSIS +10 progress. We argue, instead of a vision focus on digital justice, one that centers the life experiences of marginalized groups, recognize both state and corporate responsibility, and commits to protection and respect. The second one, that the relationship between the Global Digital Compact and WSIS must be clearer. The Elements Paper makes this link only in the AI section and too vaguely. The GDC is advancing indeed in its own tools and monitoring frameworks, and unless integrated, the two processes risk duplication. And the third point is that the multi-stakeholder model must be preserved and strengthened. And we call for a stronger IGF, better integration among governance mechanisms, and improved monitoring of outcomes. Now, our research, our position paper focus on Chile, show that this is a country that is a strong example of alignment with the WSIS vision, and there are just three points that stand out. The first one, that Chile consistently prioritizes human rights and the multi-stakeholder model and a feminist approach to a digital policy agenda. And these principles align with our position and contrast with the more restrictive tone in the Elements paper. The second one is that Chilean officials show openness and engage in multiple stakeholders, even without a formal mechanism for a WSIS plus 20 input. This mirrors our call for participatory and justice-oriented approaches. And the third one is that Chile's positions have been stable over time. 10 years after WSIS plus 10, it continues to reaffirm human rights, inclusive governance, and digital inclusion. And this is consistent even during this time of elections, which strengthens its credibility as a regional leader. We also see opportunities here. Chile has a leadership role in the region, mainly on the digital public policy arena through AI initiatives, hosting key AI forums, and having an active participation in the GDC, positioning itself as a bridge between the GDC and the WSIS plus 10 process. And this supports our call for integration with WSIS retaining primacy. In short, our position paper and the Elements paper share intent but may diverge in emphasis. And where the Elements paper is cautious, we call for ambition. And we see really relevant that the WSIS plus 20 is grounded in rights, justice, multi-stakeholder governance, and a coherent integration with the GDC that will honor the WSIS legacy and prepare us for the next 2 decades. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on time as well, and for your comments. They're very insightful. Thank you for sharing them. We'll now continue with Shashank, if he's online. Shashank Mohan. He is he's with Center for Communications Governance at the National Law University in New Delhi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please.
Great. Okay. Thanks for the floor. I'll keep my comments brief. India has consistently supported the WSIS vision and commitment to build a people-centered, inclusive, and development-oriented information society, while maintaining sovereignty in the domain of national security and cybersecurity. India supports the multi-stakeholder model of WSIS. India has consistently supported the importance of participation of Global South and developing countries, and has furthered this case through various forums like the G20, the BRICS Plus, and the various AI summits that India has participated on, being co-chair for the last summit and the host for the next summit in 26. India has also supported the GDC and the WSIS processes both. Our findings suggest that some questions do remain on how these two processes will intersect and learn from each other. But the country has consistently supported on both the development of the GDC process and WSIS plus 20 in this case. India has consistently also supported the mandate of the IGF, and our findings suggest that it would like to see sustained funding for the IGF that is not always dependent on ad hoc private party support. Enhanced cooperation is something that India has stressed on, and its vision is that it should benefit the Global South as it gets disproportionately impacted by tech development, especially AI development. India has positioned itself as a leader in the Global South, especially on matters of digital public infrastructure. It has taken a lead on sort of development and sharing of digital public infrastructure, and also slowly on the Global South development of AI specifically. India has also supported internet governance for all communities as outlined in the Elements paper, and focusing on the development of the internet for multiple languages, being a diverse country with multiple languages as well. It's consistently supported that context. India has consistently also promoted the use of technology for the furtherance and achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. India has consistently supported the development of human rights on the internet while giving due consideration to national security priorities. Although late, but India did conduct a formal consultation in Delhi and online on the Elements Paper, illustrating its continued support for the WSIS process. I'll keep my comments there and looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Shashank, for being on time and for your overview of India's participation and positioning. Now we're going to move to our next speaker, Theresa Swinehart from ICANN, also an IGF MAG member, and she will talk to us about the IGF We Want paper. Amrita already shared it in the chat. Theresa, welcome, and please take the floor.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity also to talk a little bit here about the document. As you'll have seen in the document, it's really a working draft, and while we had prepared it, it's really intended for the entire community for us to evolve it and identify what factors are necessary for an IGF that we want or need in the future, and what elements need to be reflected in that. Very pragmatic and certainly things that we have heard from different areas, but we thought it might be useful to start trying to compile it into something that is also referencing much of the other work that has also occurred. As you know, that there's reports out also on the net effects and the evidence-led exploration of the IGF, the footprint of 20 years of internet governance, IGF achievements and impact paper that's being worked on. So we have some very pragmatic areas there. The paper itself is looking at maintaining the value of what the IGF has done over the years and as envisaged in the Tunis Agenda, and focuses under several categories of continuity and stability and scope and focus, and the characteristics that are essential for the long run around that. In relation to the Elements paper, there's discussions, as you are aware, in the Elements paper about the IGF and what it needs to look like moving forward. And from that, I think moving forward also as we look at the negotiations, how do we evolve what this is, what we want and what we need in relation to conditions and assurances for an IGF to be able to be permanent and function and be a model. So if one looks at some of the categories that were identified, one is obviously continuity and stability. It's without a doubt that the IGF has shown its effectiveness, not only as the annual IGF, but also really importantly, the NRIs. The amount of national and regional internet governance initiatives is essential, and it's transformative to local dialogues. So with that, how do we achieve continuity and stability? There's logistical stability. I appreciate that sounds very practical, but a venue and locations that are accessible and predictable. And there's some suggestions in the paper about what might be opportunities to do that. We obviously have country rotational basis and the generosity of different countries that have been hosting them. And that's a major initiative. Are there opportunities to also look at in the future potentially interchanging that with a UN location that might ease some of the predictability around that and allow for further thought for countries that wish to put in a hosting opportunity but want more runway time in order to prepare that. That might also enable a longer term planning. There's the administrative stability. Clearly, we need a secretariat that can conduct the work and is able to have the certainty around the finances, and that's already been touched upon at this session. on predictable financial support and the diversity of that in different models. And you'll see some possible proposals in there. Financial stability, as has already been touched on, is really fundamental. And we need to look at ways to get diverse funding from the broad stakeholder community and look at what is a targeted annual budget and look for commitments that go for the long term so we have predictability around that and assurances that there is funding to actually carry out the work. But for that, we also need to show what does that work need to look like. Anybody who wants to contribute financially would also like to see what they are contributing to in the context of that. So there's obviously a lot of room for discussion around that. And then finally, the document looks at scope and focus of trying to capture different themes that have come up with regards to what would help make the IGF important and relevant and allow for it to continue to evolve the way it is with the other assurances and conditions that enable it to occur. So again, this document is one that we would like to share and evolve in a way that it might also become more of a community document that can reflect some of the other really important work that's occurred on what the value of the IGF is as we go into the practical discussions, whether it's the zero draft or the next draft or the negotiations of what practically does this IGF need to look like and what do we need to make it successful in the long run and to put that forward. So I'll leave that here. Happy to answer any questions, but again, this is an intention to be a contribution and happy to have it evolve and formulated into anything that is very useful for the dialogue around what the IGF should be moving forward and how do we achieve that together. So with that, I hope I kept within time or I'm giving a little bit of time back. Thank you.
Thank you, Theresa, for taking us through the IGF We Want living document, as you said. So you would, it's a living document. That means we could build on it. And we'll, in the second part of our webinar, we'll come back to more precise questions about the IGF. So we'll come back to you on that. Our next speakers are Ms. Jutta Croll and Markus Kummer. They will talk us through their submission, which is a submission on behalf of Dynamic Coalition.
Thank you, Desiree.
Please go ahead.
Yes.
Yes, very well.
I will be very short. I just give the basic submission, which reflects a consensus among all DCs. And our point was, and we made it already when we had the privilege of meeting the COVAX in Lillestrøm, that their paper seems to imply that the IGF is a standalone annual event. And we made the point that the IGF is more than that. It's a year-long event. It's a year-long ecosystem. And the DCs are part of that ecosystem, but of course, not just the DCs or the NRIs already mentioned. We have the policy networks, the best practice forums. So that is our main point to make, that it's not just an annual event, but a year-long event. And the DCs play an important part. They can contribute to implementing WSIS, they can contribute to implementing the SDGs and the GDC. And the DCs see themselves as engines of innovation, dialogue, cooperation, community-driven research, and capacity building. And in so doing, they feel they can contribute a lot. And the DC's mission endorses also the joint important for the DCs also to continue. And then we invited the individual DCs to make a submission in their area of expertise, and Jutta will talk more about that. And we had submissions from various DCs, such as the Accessibility for People with Disabilities, made very strong points on the importance of accessibility under the heading Inclusion. We also had the IS3C on cybersecurity and data privacy. And we had the DC on Internet Schools on capacity building, and also the sustainability of journalism made a strong plea for the importance of independent journalism and public interest media. But with that, I pass on to Jutta. We'll go more into depth on the individual submissions. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, thank you, Marcus, and for giving an overview on the Dynamic Coalition's general input. And thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak, especially on the Dynamic Coalition on children's rights in the digital environment, which is one of the dynamic coalitions that has been more or less from the start being founded at the IGF in Rio de Janeiro, so the second IGF. And we really appreciate the human rights-based approach of the Elements Paper, because as children's rights advocates, we strongly believe in the human rights approach, which was also underlined by the other dynamic coalitions that Marcus has already mentioned, especially also the Dynamic Coalition on accessibility and people with disabilities. With regard to children's rights, we have suggested to amend the Elements Paper to put a strong point on children's rights and to ensure children's best interest as it's laid down in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, and their personal integrity in the digital environment, that their rights to protection, provision, and participation must be respected and fulfilled in a balanced approach, not prioritizing one right over another. We've already heard also from Lucia that sometimes there is a strong focus on protection that might end up in discrimination. So we need a balanced approach that all human rights are respected. And last but not least, when we are talking about children, that means in the sense of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, that are people from birth up to the age of 18, which is in most countries the age of majority. And so these young people, these children's perspectives shall be presented either by themselves or by child rights advocates to ensure their views are given due weight in internet governance. And I will go a bit more in detail into that issue when we come to the second round of questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jutta and Marcus, for being brief and on time. Our next speakers are Bea, Guevarra, and Socheata Sokhachan. They are both from NetMission, the youth, APAC youth. So please, the floor is yours. Bea, perhaps you'd like to start first and take us through your submission to the WSIS+20 Elements Paper.
Thank you so much, Desiree. Hi, everyone. This is Bea. Thanks so much for having us. Again, my name is Bea, and Socheata and I are representing the APAC youth and NetMission community. So last July, we hosted the APAC Youth WSIS+20 webinar series. Quite a long name, bit of a tongue twister, but what it was to create more space for young people across the Asia Pacific to speak up and share their insights and also listen to experts. And from there, we were able to come together to shape the APAC Youth WSIS+20 statement, youth statement. I like to highlight that this statement it's really not the final word, but rather it's a guiding step. It's a way to help young people across our region and kind of inspire other youths as well, whether through local YGFs or even just conversations with their friends to share their voices on the digital future. In the next 5 minutes, Socheata and I will definitely maximize the allocated 6 minutes, but we'll walk you through the focus areas we worked on together with the rest of the youth that took part in this statement. I also want to share that more than the outcome itself, the process of creating this statement, it really mattered. The youth statement is still live and it's open for more youth to actually add their voices. And what we realize is that when the youth are given this kind of space, they can contribute meaningfully and connect across borders. And honestly, it's such a fun process for me, but although voluntary, and more work too, but along the way, we build connections and make friends, and we get to be invited to spaces like this. And it kind of shows that internet governance doesn't have to be boring. It can be inspiring and energizing. But basically, our main message in our statement, it's pretty simple, that youth are not just the future of the internet. We're already part of it. We're already here. We are the present. So we want to definitely see youth participation mainstreamed in all internet governance process, not just as a side activity, but part of the core discussions. We believe in capacity building that goes beyond one-off trainings with sustainable programs that actually help young people across APAC, especially those in underserved areas, to build long-term skills. We want to push harder in on meaningful youth engagement. Right now, youth are mentioned here and there. We're often lumped together in a broad sense, but from our perspective, youth kind of deserve a standalone focus because our realities are kind of different as we grew up with the internet. And we're also the generation who will carry the outcomes of WSIS+20 into the next decades. So also something I want to be clear about is that we're not saying youth know it all, right? I mean, who does? But in fact, our brains are still developing. And that's exactly why we value guidance and mentorship from those with more experience. And what matters is making that guidance accessible and welcoming, so that youth can learn and contribute into meaningful roles in this space. So in short, we agree with the Elements Paper's direction, but we want to amplify the youth's lens more clearly and concretely. So I'll pass the next 3 minutes to Socheata to share more of our focus areas.
Thanks, Bea, and hello everyone. My name is Jutta and I'm from Cambodia, and I'm very honored to be here with my colleague Bea to represent the voice of youth from across the APAC region. And we'd like to building on Bea points on trust. We want to emphasize more that trust in the digital space is non-negotiable. So while the WSIS+20 element paper rightly note that the exponential growth of data, as youth, we have a serious concern about it. On the data and digitalizations, our data is harvested in a not transparent way, especially in AI model training. So with our clear consents or transparencies, our young user trust problem become worse by this. So to rebuild it, we need a right-based approach to data governance that include the ethical safeguards and ensure that youth participation at every stage of the data lifecycle. And we also believe that in a new approach to monitoring in measurements, one that embeds youth as a co-creator of the evidence. So this means that using combinations of qualitative data like literacy rates, qualitative tools, such as participation survey and storytelling, so to truly understand the lived experience of the young people. And we also redefine what it means to be connected. Connectivity is not just about infrastructure rollout. I think it can be about speed, latency, affordability, and fair competition. So as the element paper notes, digital divide persists, but the problem isn't just a lack of access, it also lack of relevant content. This is why we are strong advocates from the localization of the content. We need to enable youth-driven innovation from developing local language AI tools to healthcare to agriculture to creating a more community managed for the digital learning hub for youth. And we also align with the element paper emphasis on building a secure and trusted ICT environment. However, we feel it needs to be more specific on how this is achieved. And we agree on the importance of the cybersecurity and building trust in ICT, but we also welcome the recognitions of the need to address the persistent digital divide. And our main point of divergence is the lack of a strong, specific focus on youth concerns related to data and AI. And we feel that the element paper discussing on the AI and data lack in a critical perspective of those whose data is being used. We want to emphasize that without transparent data governance and ethical AI, trust will continue to erode the trust among the young user. And we also advocate for a broader definition of connectivity that move beyond the basic access metric to truly capture the quality of the digital experience, which is a major barrier for the youth in underserved regions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Socheata, for adding those insights and sharing with us your concerns, especially with AI and lack of transparency and data collection. Next speaker in this first part of the webinar is Chafic Chaya, and he will talk to us about the Lebanon IGF, the National Regional IGF report and submission to the WSIS+20 Elements Paper. Chafic, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Desiree. Thank you so much. And as you can see, my name is Chafic Chaya. I rep NCC on the screen, but today I'm wearing another hat, the hat of a member and ex-chair of Lebanon IGF. Sorry, I couldn't change the name, but here we are. So first, let me begin thanking the IGF Secretariat and the MAC Working Group Strategy for organizing this important series of webinars. And my thanks to Amrita and Desiree for leading this session. So for us, we believe that this dialogue is really important and valuable as it helps us for the upcoming negotiation and ensure that voices from NRIs across the region are heard. So let's explore the Lebanon IGF reflection on this elements paper. I will start with the positive points where we agree and we endorse. So some of these points, I will start with the WSIS vision remains valid. So both our submission and the element paper reaffirm the WSIS vision of a people-centered, inclusive, and development-oriented information society. We welcome the paper's recognition that all stakeholders have an indispensable role to play in achieving WSIS objectives. Second, anti-fragmentation and inclusion. We strongly support preventing internet fragmentation through cooperation and increasing participation by developing countries in the internet governance discussion and IGF processes. Third, recognizing the IGF. We appreciate the paper's explicit acknowledgement of the IGF as the primary multi-stakeholder platform for internet governance discussion. And I believe this is critical. Fourth, we believe at the Lebanon IGF that the elements paper rightly highlights that despite progress, divides persist. Lebanon IGF emphasizes that this is not only about connectivity, but also about meaningful access. What that means affordability, digital literacy, relevant local content, and capacity development. And for us, this includes not only the different stakeholders, but the communities in difficulties, in conflict or displacement. Now, let me go to where we diverge or where we should place stronger emphasis. So the element paper states in paragraph 59, the governance of the internet should be multilateral, transparent, and democratic. For Lebanon IGF, this is a concern. Multilateral usually denotes intergovernmental processes. We know that the internet has succeeded precisely because of its governance as a multi-stakeholder, open, bottom-up, inclusive, etc. So bringing all the stakeholders, governments, technical community, civil society, academia, and private sector together in their respective roles. Second point, IGF renewal. We are aligned, I believe, with the majority of our colleagues on the need to renew the IGF mandate and establish it as a permanent UN platform. But we should not forget that we need to strengthen the IGF framework, outputs, sustainability, and accessibility. One of the important points that we note here is recognition of NRIs. As NRI, Lebanon IGF is not a simple side actor. We are the bridge between the local realities and the global framework. So the NRIs, they provide the bottom-up legitimacy that makes the IGF unique. We therefore propose NRI be formally recognized in the WSIS+20 outcome document. This would ensure that national and regional perspectives are meaningfully inform global outcome. And finally, one broader observation, while the Elements paper is comprehensive, Lebanon IGF suggests going a step further in emphasizing capacity building and resilience. What that means, this is particularly relevant for our region or regions like our region in the Middle East, where instability and conflict can quickly translate into digital exclusion. So strengthening resilience through infrastructure development, training, and cooperation is not an added value. It's essential to achieving the WSIS vision. I will stop here, and I look forward to the exchange later. Thank you, Desiree.
Thank you, Chafic, for your observations. Now we have an open floor for questions from anyone. I see some people have joined the webinar a bit late, but there's no specific questions asked to any of our speakers. Now it's an opportunity to ask. So welcome Avri as well, and Wood, and June and others for joining us. If I'll
Desiree, if I may, while people put up their hands, I did have a question here, as in we see in this panel there are, as in many of the people are having similar points. I think everyone wants, all the papers which I have read through talk about the WSIS renewal, the renewal of IGF, strengthening of the IGF, reinforcing the multi-stakeholder model, as in this is standard across all of the papers. And you know, what is interesting to see is Lebanon also talks about meaningful connectivity, and Chile's paper also does talk about meaningful connectivity. So there are quite a lot of commonalities, and ICANN also stresses on the second question, which is how to strengthen the IGF. But I think I'll first go to Bia and Socheata, and I look at the youth's submission. I do see a lot of points there, and I do see a lot of ambitious points also there, such as monetary support mechanisms, youth connectivity fund. You talk about youth advisory council, etc. So would you like to share a bit more about how you are looking at youth engagement, you know, because I see a lot of things, stipends for youth in terms of research, or even, you know, youth-led audits for advisory panels on national digital IDs, etc. In 2 minutes, could you share a bit more on what you are actually looking at?
Yeah, thanks for giving us the first spot on that, Amrita. But what we really want, just to highlight a bit more on what we talked about. So we kind of advised having like a youth advisory council. I feel like I mentioned a while ago, it's kind of guidance that we need into this kind of in the space that we have. What we mentioned in our document is to provide a direct ongoing channel for youth to influence action line facilitators, the IGF, and other WSIS related programs. We kind of just need to expand the conversation online safely to be more holistic as well. And I kind of mentioned in our document as well that in the participation is not limited to those who can afford to travel, but supported by stronger hybrid models and digital accessibility. In responding to about the IGF, we also want to see that youth participation shouldn't be something special. It should kind of be the norm, especially by 2030. Of course, we envision the IGF to continue to evolve with the times, but that's kind of what we are going for, a standing youth advisory group that feeds into the decision making, and kind of sustain resource for youth-led initiatives at national and regional levels. Personally, as much as I'd love to be a youth forever, you know, I feel like we all do, but I mean, none of us will. That's why we kind of want to have something that prepares the next generation for sure.
Thank you so much, Bia, for this. And Marcus and Jutta, I do see even the DCAD mentioning a lot in their accessibility submission, more funding, accessible tools, making technology more accessible, you know, having a bit more about that. Would you also want to speak a bit about that part of it, or anyone from DCAD, briefly in 2 to 3 minutes?
I saw that Judith is on the call, and she's one of the co-authors of the DCAD submission. Why don't we ask her to come in?
Thank you, Marcus. Judith, would you like to speak a bit more briefly on the DCAD's ask? I think we'll come back to her on it. And, you know, all of you have heard the different thoughts which have been going across. And Theresa also shared a bit about, you know, how they have been thinking of the IGF and improvements, etc. And I would like to ask all of you, one is if you want to comment on it, and the second question, that if you imagine the IGF receives the mandate which you are envisioning, what would you like it to deliver by 2030? We could go with perhaps Lucia, Shashank, the same chronology. And in case you want to speak anything more about what Theresa spoke about, how they are envisaging the IGF they want, and if you want to build on it or contradict each other there. Yes, Desiree, you want to share something?
Yes, Amrita, I also had kind of a follow-up question for Chafic, because he also spoke about resilience, and especially in the Middle East region, as I understood, and about continuity and digital exclusion. I just wanted to mention that there is work that the Best Practice Forum is working on securing internet access and core resources in context of crisis and conflict. So I think it would really, I don't know if you actually looked at it at the National IGF, but probably it's a good idea to join that Best Practice Forum on securing internet access and core resources in crisis and conflict.
Thank you, Desiree. Thank you for this. Yeah, I will search this. But here my point was most of the submissions focus on access and inclusion, yes. But if you highlight the continuity of digital services in fragile and conflict-affected states, and so that's why I'm saying, as on behalf of Lebanon IGF, we stress that resilience is a priority for connectivity, for critical infrastructure, for everything, so that the society can be ensured that they are stay connected during wars, disasters, and other economic crises. Thank you.
Thank you. And before I give it back to Amrita, I see that Wout also has his hand up, so we'll go first next to him before.
Yes, thank you, Desiree, but I thought you were going to go to others first, but I put up my hand just to be sure. If you allow me, then I think that I've only been able to participate in 2 of the sessions, the last 2, and the other 2 I was on holiday. But we're preaching to the choir, and I think that's a little bit what Henriette is saying in the chat as well after I put up my hand. But I think I've got 2 questions. One is, what is happening towards delegations that are actually going to decide on this? Is there any contact from this group with people who will be deciding? And the second is, what is it exactly that we expect? Because we know what we want, but what is there an expectation of sort of continuity, and to what would be the baseline that we expect to come out of New York? So contact, and what do we expect? Thank you.
Thank you. Wout, for that question, we let people think about, but I think we now need to go back to the second part and then take all the questions.
Yeah, but Desiree, in case anyone wants to respond, please feel free to respond to Wout's question. Anyone wants to take it? or anyone from who is participating wants to take it. And I do see Henriette also had a comment. Yes, Theresa, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to at least give some thoughts. I think, and I saw Henriette's comment as well, on the question of what can be our expectations out of the dialogues in New York and the negotiations itself. I think some of it is also premised on what is provided and what information is shared in relation to the issues that are being discussed, and what pragmatic approaches can be taken to achieve that. So if we take, by example, any of the topics, the dialogue and the negotiations obviously are between governments, but they're also being informed by the input that's being provided from sessions such as this. And so the extent to which one can provide pragmatic input into those dialogues, that can also help inform and influence it. So I think with regards to expectations, some of it is on all of us as a broad community. And by us, I don't mean ICANN or any specific stakeholder group, but all of us together on what it is that success or achievable aspects could look like in at least informing the dialogues that are then going to occur within the negotiations. So just an observation that we also have an important role and responsibility in setting our expectations of what we would like to see achieved, and then in partnership with the negotiators, obviously seeing what can be achieved. I hope that's a helpful contribution to the discussion.
Thank you, Theresa. Henriette, do you want to share something else, or is that?
No. Let's move on. Thanks a lot, Amrita. It's just I put that in the chat because it was expressed to me as an interesting comment by somebody who said that it's fantastic to hear about all these good ideas, but are we being pragmatic enough? But I think Theresa has already answered that. So please go ahead.
Right, thank you. And before we move ahead, I think Avri has raised a very important question. When we are talking about participation, inclusion, are there any thoughts on the hybrid model, how to improve it? And I don't know if Avri is able to speak or not, but I think there are challenges in hybrid models and we can't expect everyone to be everywhere. How do we address those things? Yes, Chafic, I do see your hand up.
Yeah, just from our experience in the region, from the Middle East region, the hybrid, people here, they don't like to have this online interaction for one simple reason. By culture, we like to socialize. When I meet with you, I shake hand, have a cup of coffee. It's much more impactful than sitting in front of a screen and listening to you. So this is just my observation from my region, and I believe there are some other regions who have the same culture as here.
Thank you, Chafic. Avri, over to you, and then Henry.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm the one, I actually look at it and sort of say, if people are participating in a meeting on site, then it should be possible for others to participate online. Now, I'm saying it should be possible. I understand that there's a lot of culture yet that hasn't changed, hasn't opened to accepting this way of doing things. And that'll take a while. But the fact is, in almost every culture, there are people, often among the younger, not among us, the older, but there are often people that are more than happy to adopt new methods. I understand also that part of having access is having sufficient access to be able to do that, and not everyone can yet. But as an aspiration, as a goal, it really should be very simple. If people can participate on site, then people should be able to participate online. And we have to remember that it's impossible for everybody to participate on site. Even if we had enough money and enough seats and enough planes and enough carbon, credits and enough hotel rooms and big enough cities, it's just impossible. So the notion of a future in governance absolutely requires online participation. There'll always be people getting together. There'll always be a subsection. We should all have our turn at being on site and online. So there's a lot to be thought about in making it possible and in doing it. But it is one thing that's possible as an aspiration. And I think it's absolutely necessary. Thanks. I hope I didn't talk too long.
No, thank you so much, Avery. I think those are things to be thought. Henry, and then Judith, then we'll move to our panelists for that question we asked.
Thanks for giving my floor. So I'm Henry Wang from the Singapore IGF. And today I had a meeting in the IMDA from the Singapore government. And we're talking about the AI safety and multilingual AI for the emerging countries. So they gave me a lot of thoughts. And I really want to extend and this kind of a research and application and to all the global South. So I think the IGF, the best part by IGF, and we definitely need to make it permanent, including the NRI. So I support the proposal from our Lebanon and IGF, and it's very important structure because with IGF and NRI, we actually naturally form a DAO of DAOs. What does that mean? That means the IGF naturally match with the protocol of our next generation web. So it's decentralized and the data ownership will return to everyone. So the AI governance and the internet governance will be totally different from today. So it's coming within the 5 years, and it will be realized within the 5 years. So NRI is a natural DAO, and IGF is a DAO of DAOs. So it's govern our internet and AI instead of large companies to govern it. IGF, right now we have a lot of meetings.
Henry, sorry, I would have to use my moderator's thing, but I do get your message. We'll have more conversations, but since we have time, Judith wants to speak. We have another question. I would be interrupting you, but thank you for your valuable inputs. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah.
Judith, you need to be very quick.
Yes.
Want to know a bit about the DCAT paper.
So no, I actually wasn't gonna mention about the DCAT. I was gonna, but
we had in fact called you out to speak a bit about the DCAT submission where you asked for funding, making technology accessible. So very briefly, 2 minutes, if you could speak on that.
Oh, sure. So what we put in, I don't have the thing in front of me, but what we put in is that we want to bring more persons with disability to the IGF, to actually experience it in person, just as Chafic was saying, meet with the people, shake their hands, get to know them. And the best way of doing that, and because we've noticed that there hasn't been as many disability things. So we asked for funding to bring more people to the IGF, also to make sure a lot of the awareness of things are not really done. First, the IGF actually does produces their literature in an accessible fashion, whereas others don't. They do a fancy graphics with PDF, and then it makes a document that had been previously accessible not inaccessible. So there's a lot of awareness that needs to be done with that, and at the IGF and at WSIS and others. And so we are looking for not only for the funding, but also to increase the awareness. And the best way of doing that is to get on the leadership committees there, is to get on either the MAG or the others. But one of the problems we've been facing, besides the funding issue, is that a lot of these committees, they don't
they don't have a separate process. Yeah, separate process for disabilities. So they classify everyone according to where you live. And that also precludes people of being on there. So in a nutshell, that is what we were talking about. But thanks.
Thank you so much,
But I
Judith. Sorry
wanted
for
my
keeping you-
comment
Yeah. Okay.
was originally supposed to be on the hybrid, which is why I raised my hand. And I think it's important to have in person, but also for hybrid to give others the chance who cannot come, do not have the funding, want to participate. And hybrid should not just be a YouTube, it should be a two-way communication street.
Thank you so much, Judith, for it. And I do see Henriette has added a comment that inclusion should not be the presence of the group, but also the agenda, the content and issues. So we'll come back to it if we have time. So we'll go to our speakers. And my question is, if the IGF is renewed the way you are visualizing it, what would you want it to deliver by 2030? Lucia first, then Shashank, and we could use the same route. Lucia,
Okay.
do you want to? Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, of course, no one has like the perfect formula on how to strengthen the IGF, and but we believe that to move forward, we must accept that it will be an iterative process, one that requires commitments to strengthen national IGFs and to create them where they do not exist yet, so they can act as a communication bridge between local actors and the global IGF. And to truly strengthen the IGF is essential also to recognize that while multi-stakeholder model is key, we must make visible and address the power imbalances in participation. Too often, a few powerful actors dominate or capture conversations, such as those that we are having now on AI. And finally, the IGF must move beyond dialogue to deliver clear outputs, recommendations, frameworks, voluntary commitments that governments, companies, and civil society can act on, because its legitimacy depends on turning inclusive debate into tangible change. And regarding the hybrid format of the IGF, we know that experience suggests that in-person space offer a richness that only meetings cannot fully replicate. But the problem is not the format itself, maybe, but rather the relevance and weight given to online participants and their themes, their priorities, and the resonance and impact of sessions that take place online.
Thank you. Shashank?
Thanks, Amrita. I'm going to repeat, some of the points that Lucia mentioned. Of course, representative sort of session acceptance from the Global South is something that we deeply care about. And also building sessions at the IGF in a way that encourages within a session interaction. I have not attended the past two IGFs myself, but colleagues have said that both at Riyadh and even in Norway, engagement within the session was a bit difficult. And I would like to support the hybrid inclusion. I know it's difficult, but with limited funding for travel, especially for us academic organizations, it's good if we can participate online, with the caveats about online participation. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but maybe also consider some Global South friendly travel locations. It's not easy to sort of travel to the Global North always. But yeah, limited points there, Amrita. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shashank. And I'll go to Theresa. Though you shared a lot of points, Theresa, you all have been thinking a lot. By hearing these discussions today, do you think there are certain other things you would want to add? in what you want to look at in terms of IGF in 2030 in terms of delivery?
Yeah, I think, I'll share a couple observations and seeing Marcus on the screen as well, have reflected that, over the last 20 years, the themes and topics that the IGF has addressed have really, it's evolved, and it's evolved based on where the internet and where technology is going. And it's reflective of that. And so, at this last IGF, we saw that, some topics that are very important today, a lot of sessions around artificial intelligence, or a lot of sessions around themes that are evolving with the use of different kinds of devices. So I would say that, as was also sort of captured, and again, this is from hearing from many different stakeholders. So this is not, ICANN solely in any way whatsoever. It's just to seek to sort of consolidate. My sense is that the IGF needs to be evolving to continue to be a resource of information, a forum that is agile enough to address issues that are coming up. Bia had made some very good remarks about, the youth and the importance of that, but it's also the next generations are using technology in a very different kind of way than perhaps my mother would, or is, those of us who grew up with the dial-up connectivity as opposed to not having that. The IGF needs to be a place that can adapt towards that, but also be a place that allows to inform decisions for policy, regulatory, and operational aspects of the internet. So the internet continues to be something that is evolving and doesn't become fragmented, and the benefits and the value that it's afforded to the globe continue to evolve. So I realize that's sounding very aspirational, but what are some very practical things to put into place that can lend the conditions and assurances that that is where the IGF moves forward to? And it could be, providing mapping documents, it could be providing reports, it could be providing searchable databases, it could be providing different avenues to make sure that it is a living entity and a platform for those important conversations. We have no idea what technology looks like tomorrow. There's surprises all the time. So I realize it's aspirational, but how can we be pragmatic and keep it that way so it is not, so it remains technologically neutral, so it is agile to address issues moving forward. So that would be my 3 cents.
Thank you so much, Theresa. And I like, some practical things the paper talks about, like, making things searchable. There's a lot of documents or resources which IGF has, how to kind of put it in a proper searchable manner, etc. I think those are very practical steps which the ICANN document talks about. So thank you so much for this. And we'll move to Jutta and Marcus on how the DCs look at what you expect from the IGF.
Marcus.
Shall I go?
Yes, please go first.
Okay, well, we don't have a common DC position on that, but of course, the most basic point is that we hope the IGF mandate will get renewed and will get a solid financial basis, and it's a permanent mandate. That's of the basic point. But then how to get on from there? Obviously, the DCs hope that we recognized as an important contributor to the substantive work, and on a more personal basis also to follow up on Theresa, who had a more sort of aspirational focus. And I would say my personal vision would be that the IGF turns into the policy equivalent of the IGF standards bottom-up way, with rough consensus, that the IGF does that with policy recommendations that they come out of the IGF based on bottom-up conversations. We already have the basis, we have the BPFs, we have the policy networks, we have the DCs that can provide input, and that we find a form of a rough consensus, and this will get recognized by the global community as a policy recommendation. But again, that is a long-term vision. Thank you for the attention, and maybe Jutta has other brilliant ideas.
Thank you so much, Marcus. Yes, I would like to add that even the discussion we had in the previous moments about hybrid events and being on site underlines the importance of the intersessional work that the NRIs and also the dynamic coalitions in the IGF ecosystem are doing. If we wouldn't have the national and regional internet governance forums, we would even have more pressing issues in regard of attendance to the annual meeting from all parts of the world, as was already discussed in the chat. So I really underline that what Marcus has said, dynamic coalitions and NRIs need to be recognized as an important part of the intersessional work that is constitutional for the success of the Internet Governance Forum. From a child rights advocate perspective, I would like to imagine that the IGF really respects children and not considers them as a marginalized group only, but that they are being respected as rights holders and stakeholders in the multi-stakeholder community. And as said before, that means children from birth up to the age of majority, 18 years old. We also would like to see a guarantee for children's best interest, as it is laid down in Article 3 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, that the child best interest is given priority in internet governance. And last but not least, as I mentioned before, children's perspective and their views should be given due weight in internet governance. And if we don't focus only on deliverables, you have asked what we envision the IGF to deliver, but if we also focus on outcomes, I do think that would be a very respectful outcome of internet governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Jutta. Over to you, Bia and Socheata. What are you looking for by 2030?
Thank you, Amrita. I think the discussion really rich in highlighting the need for the IGF to adapt. And we believe that to truly fulfill its mandates and remain relevant in the coming years, we think the IGF must evolve into a more actionable and inclusive body. And our vision for 2030 is about making that happen, especially by empowering the next generation of digital leaders. If the IGF receives the mandate we envision by 2030, we want to see a fundamental shift. Youth should be a co-creator, not just a consultant, and we want youth sitting at the same table as decision maker, not just side event, but integrated into the main discussion. And to achieve this, we require concrete change, and we propose a youth connectivity fund or similar financial support embedded within the WSIS and the IGF. This will break down the structural barrier like travel, attendance cost. I think we have interesting discussion regarding the funding. But yes, the main and I think concrete change that we propose as a youth. And we also need to expand the conversation on online safety to be more holistic. It's not just about the harm mitigation, it's also include right, privacy agency, and especially the mental health among young people this day. Lastly, from my point is we must actively support the meaningful participation of youth from underrepresented and marginalized group by empowering them, by having them have the same access and equity with other youth. And that include the indigenous, LGBT community, and also disabled youth, ensuring that their unique perspectives are at the forefront and in a digital policy. And I will pass the floor to Bear. I think Bear will add more brilliant points to how we envisioned. Thank you.
Jutta. I'll be fast, Amrita, I promise. So by 2030, we want the IGF to definitely just be a space where youth, like what Chika mentioned, youth are not just consulted, but truly share the responsibility in shaping the digital future with our decisions today made with the tomorrow's generations in mind. And I also want to continuously remind everyone, remember the core of the IGF, it is the multi-stakeholder approach. So hopefully by 2030, I'd like the IGF to deliver stronger youth integration, more accountability in how discussions turn into action, and resources that reach the marginalized, disabled, underrepresented communities. Basically a space that doesn't just talk about inclusive internet, but actively builds it together. And I like talking to you guys, and I like learning from all of you. And I already believe we're online friends and connecting. It's so important whether on-site or online, and that these conversations actually continue and lead to action. So to wrap it up, to look whether it's through a youth statement or how we look towards 2030, young people are here and we're ready to contribute, and we're eager to help shape that digital future. The challenge is not whether youth can participate, but whether the broader community will continue to open the door and listen and make space for the youth. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Pia. Chafic, over to you before I pass it on to Desiree.
Thank you, Amrita. I'm changing all my replies. I had something listening to the discussion and having the insights of my colleagues. So I will say different things in order not to repeat my colleagues. So by 2030, what we would like to see IGF first, inclusive, accessible, not only in practice, not only in principle, but on practice. This is based on the discussion that we heard today. Second, IGF must become action-oriented without turning the platform into a negotiating forum. That means, as I think colleagues mentioned, deliver evidence-based policy, best practice toolkits, technical guidance, and this can be voluntary adapted. So this is the second. Third, it should be recognized as the hub for connecting the different digital platforms and initiatives. That means connecting WSIS, Global Digital Compact, SDGs, in order to avoid duplication and ensuring coherence across global processes. And finally, I can't end without saying a word about the internet itself. So the IGF should be resilient and future-proof, supporting the technical stability of the internet core as the foundation for all digital services. In 4 words, IGF in 2030 should be globally anchored, locally connected, technically resilient, and continuously impactful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chafic. You were literally giving the showstopper line right now, but we have a few more minutes, so I will pass it on to Desiree. But I think there are some points which come out here, and while we don't have too much of divergence, I think that is also good, because what we hear from all the communities you represent today is we want an inclusive internet which is secure, open, and runs the way it is. We want the renewal of the WSIS. We want the renewal of the IGF, strengthening it, making it more inclusive, perhaps being more agile, action-oriented, without becoming a battleground for negotiations. And obviously, accommodating all kinds of communities. It can be youth, it can be indigenous communities, minorities. Language is important. I think all your papers talk about those points, highlighting those, and also how new technologies like AI, etc., are used. The Lebanon paper, the NetMission paper, even the others are talking about how AI can be used in a transformative way, and how the harms can be mitigated. Which is human rights respecting. But Desiree, I pass it on to you if you want to ask some questions, or if you see some strands you would like to highlight, or ask other questions to the panelists.
Thank you, Amrita. I would like to give the more time to participants of the webinar to ask questions, but also use this opportunity perhaps to ask the Soo-Young Lee, the chair of Korea Internet Governance Forum, since we have this opportunity with you being online participant to give you the floor if you wish to say something. So Su-Yung Lee, if you'd like to share any thoughts with us, here's the time and an opportunity. Okay, hearing none, we'll circle back to it. To continue this summing up, I'm sure there'll be some questions for our speakers, but I think it's also important to see that we really appreciate the webinar speakers for their vision of the IGF and to remain agile, as I think Theresa was saying, so that it is possible to reflect and be a resource of information on where the technology and the internet is going. But also we had this really good personal vision of Markus Kummer, where I think he would like the IGF by 2030 to become the policy equivalent of the ITF. But also other speakers spoke about recognition of the national.
Desiree, sorry to interrupt. Jutta and Henry have their hands up.
Okay, we'll go back to him then.
Jutta first and then
Thanks
Henry.
for
Oh,
giving
Jutta.
me the floor.
Yes.
So,
I didn't want to interrupt neither Desiree nor Henry, so could you advise, please, who shall speak first?
Jutta, your hand went up first, so if you could,
Okay.
and go to Henry.
Ladies first.
Yes, thank you. As a final thought, I just wanted to get back to something that Theresa said in her last statement, and which resonated very well with me, is we never will know how technology looks tomorrow. So we need to anticipate what might happen. And we also had a chat, in the chat we had been talking about artificial intelligence and what risks and beneficial benefits that might is already providing. And I do think artificial intelligence, it didn't come as a surprise. It has been there for a very long time. But what came as a surprise was how it changes the way that we are using certain services. And there again, as having children as a target group in mind, I would say we need to anticipate how much safety we can put into these developments. And that would mean adopting the principle of safety by design in all these developments, at least to make us a little bit more aware how technology might look tomorrow and what consequences that will have. And if the IGF could be a place where we can do this with the perspective of all the stakeholders, then that would be something that I really appreciate for 2030, but maybe also beforehand. Thank you.
Henry, over to you.
Thanks for giving me the floor. So actually, I'm from the technology background and actually leading the technology frontier. So I exactly know what IGF will need and what IGF, NRIs, and also our group, MAG group, and what we need, what kind of a tool and the protocols make IGF the governance organization. It's not Internet Governance Forum. It's Internet Governance Force in the future. Exactly. Okay, because currently our protocols emphasize the centralized control of the Internet. And it is against the internationalization of our Internet. And the next generation protocol, like the younger generation and from our Asian Pacific, and they probably knows about some like advanced terminology. But with, among those terminologies, there come a whole ecosystem for our new, we call it AI-powered Internet of Value. So this AI-powered Internet of Value organized by IGF and DAO of DAOs, they can generate value by themselves. They can generate fund for themselves. So funding will not be a problem in the future if we can gather together IGF as DAO of DAOs. So if there's future have chance, I would like to have a workshop and I can introduce all the advanced technologies, protocols, and tools together to IGF. Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much, Henry. And Desiree, over to you for summing up. We have just 10 minutes in case.
Well, we don't need to take all of them, or in case somebody has any other thought, please feel free to interrupt me. I think we've seen a lot of discussions going on in the chat, and I may read some of it, but I think the funding came up again as in terms of fellowship programs that exist to strengthen the IGF. But also, I think there was a comment by Azim Sajjad that inclusion of elderly and disabled people and senior citizens, their participation needs to be increased to share their experiences and views. And maybe perhaps, I said, they might have more time to volunteer as well, so we should include them. And so they should equally be included as youth, women, and indigenous people. So just to make sure these comments do not stay forgotten, the IGF is a unique space for talking about what risks we feel, the actions of governments, the tech sector, and the tech organizations hold for the internet and digital development. So these are comments by Henriette Esterhuizen, and also referring to something that Marcus said in the way that the ITF is developing solutions, that we should look at the policy and regulation approaches to do the same time. And that IGF needs to continue to tackle really complex issues, and otherwise it will stay irrelevant in next 5 years. So all the great comments from all of you, and really want to thank everyone for this discussion. I think this enriches really the MAG strategy working group to see what the other organizations around the world and those involved directly in youth of NRIs feel about the IGF extension of its mandate, how to make it permanent, how to make it sustainable, and how to make it better. At the same time, we acknowledged a lot of challenges in front of us that are still there to be solved. The recognition of national and regional initiatives, and also the recognition that the IGF is not just an annual meeting, but it's a year-round ecosystem of events of all the parts of the IGF family, as we see. So we take a lot of this, and we will share the recording. And I once again want to thank to all our speakers for their valuable insights today, and because you have helped us see the IGF in this together with NRIs, and how it could remain agile, and how it could expand its reach, and how we can strengthen its role as a policy equivalent of a standards body organization. So with that, Amrita, if you have any other final comments, or anyone else?
Not really, as in from the working group strategy, Chris, Bruna, and Titi, we'd like to thank everyone here for joining in. The Zero draft is expected to be out tomorrow. Let's see how it is. And I think our work, as Theresa was mentioning, and Henriette, that while the community agrees on a lot of things, we also have to share those messages with the governments and others who are negotiating, so that we also see in the papers something which we all aspire for. I think with that, we would end it. The recording on YouTube would be circulated in a day or two. And thank you so much. We will keep you posted.
Ce week-end marquait la véritable rentrée du football régional, avec des terrains qui
A very
reprennent.
nice way to close it with some French language.
Yeah. Question for you, is the chat going to be saved? Because I don't know if the chat goes on the
No,
YouTube.
the chat will not be shared.
Not be saved.
It would be the YouTube discussion which would be there.
Thank you
Okay.
all. Thanks for the MAGS working group strategy, Bruna, TT, all the members, Henriette, and see you again after the Zero Draft gets published. We hope to have a new set of webinars.
Thank you, Amrita. Thank you, Desiree.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.